And you talked a little bit about Alabama at that point because you're kind of forced to. Your name is being mentioned a lot. You are the standard for all the Alabama fans. They're comparing everything that happens with the players, with the treatments, with the product on the field, with everything to you and how you ran that place for so long. That is a massive compliment. Tough for Kalen DeBoer to come in there and put it in his own culture, but everybody knew following you that was going to be the case. Now that we're 5 days removed, on Monday your message was like, hey, you can lay an egg, but weeks 1 to week 2 is where you get your biggest progress in your team. And maybe they got smacked in the mouth and maybe they're better. You were trying to spin it into a positive way, I think, because a lot of Alabama fans are going to listen to everything you're saying. As we sit here on Friday, what are your thoughts? And what do you think Kalen has been telling his team? And how do you think the Roll Tide world is really feeling about it all at this point?
Yeah, well, my message was, basically when you have a negative consequence and you don't teach and do a good job of identifying what do we need to fix so the players have something that they can relate to, if you don't teach, it really affects morale in a negative way. So I think you got to be positive and show the players when they did it right, here's the success we had. When we didn't do it right, whether it was even one player didn't do it right, maybe that's why they had success. But I do think that there was something in that game that is tough to understand, in my opinion, in that Alabama looked great going down the field on the first drive. Florida State gets the ball and goes right down the field and scores. And then the whole sort of psychological disposition of Alabama's team changed. For what reason? I don't know. Was it anxiety? Was it expectation? But one thing about coaching in Alabama, they expect you to win every game. And there's a high expectation, and the standard is really, really high for what you're supposed to accomplish and what you're supposed to do. You need to protect your players from that and give them a different way to compete in the game so they're not looking at the scoreboard. They're not worrying about the outcome. They can stay focused on the things that they need to do to compete in the game for 60 minutes and play one play at a time, so they're not worried about that because that's all they hear everywhere they go, on social media, everywhere they go. They're expected to win. So you can't let that creep in and that anxiety about being outcome-oriented affect their performance.
What do you think, and I know you know him and you're in the building and you obviously care deeply about the Alabama football program. We actually call this show a program because of how you describe your program whenever you're at Alabama in its entirety. Kalen DeBoer sits down after that game, looks in the mirror, and has a massive moment with himself, you think? Is that one of those types of games where it gets loud enough that you think he is really, I don't want to say in a whirlwind, but the reality of what he is signed up to do kind of hits him? You think that happened after week 1?
I don't think there's any question about it. Kalen is a really good guy. He's a good coach. He's always had success everywhere he's been. Maybe he hadn't had to deal with this kind of scrutiny in the past, but if you're going to be successful, you got to be able to self-assess and figure out, hey, what can I do better? And I know that he's reaching out to a lot of people trying to do that, and hopefully they get it turned around this week and develop some confidence on this team so they can move forward in a positive way.
How many national championships did you win?
7.
How many did you lose?
3.
Okay, so Kalen DeBoer, when you talk about big shoes to fill, I don't know how long all your national championships are, the trophies, when you stack them up. But boy, feels like those shoes were going to be tough to fit. And Kalen DeBoer, we thought was going to be the right guy to handle it, still has a chance, right? We shouldn't just give up completely on this entire situation, which I think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people have given up. There's a season left, right? We can still think that way?
Yeah, and I think that's the way the players should think. That's the way the coaches should think. And I say they got to stay focused on what they need to do to teach and get better, create roles for the players on their team, and how they can support the team. There's one thing about this that you and I, when we played, we wanted to do well. We wanted to be good. But we also had a responsibility, those guys over there standing on the sidelines that was on our team. And that's a responsibility that everybody's got to figure out in this day and age of football when there's so much individual name, image, and likeness transfer. And once you decide and make a commitment to a team, you got to do a good job for yourself, but you also owe it to the guys standing on the sidelines or in the huddle with you. And I think that's an important thing for all these guys to understand.
I mean, obviously the loafs are just so abnormal for any Alabama team that we've seen throughout my lifetime because you've been the coach basically there throughout all of my adulthood. I think the reason why it never happened is because you had like 4 or 5 stars at every position. So they were scared to death to loaf because the guy behind him might Wally Pip the shit out of him. I mean, there's a chance that that's going to happen. Just didn't feel that way first week. But Dan Orlovsky counted 21 lifts. Hey, that's Dan Orlovsky. He watched every player, every play.
Well, I think all coaches want that. But, the one thing nobody wants to be insignificant. And you always have the bench. And if a guy didn't do what he was supposed to do, he knew that he would, and it didn't matter who it was. You got the bench.
National championship, you did it.